This hit and run econometrics is an Engle curve from media history. This is an article that I wrote with my JMU colleague Sharon O'Hare, paying for the video revolution, consumer spending on the mass media. What was the video revolution? It was the introduction of cable TV and the video cassette recorder. Doesn't sound like much of a revolution, but in those two technologies was laid the foundation of what we have in media today, because before the video revolution, most viewers only had access to 3 or 4 channels and they had to be viewed live. Cable multiplied the number of channels, and the video cassette recorder, forerunner of today's DVRs and other technologies, permitted viewing anytime. Video definitely changed. Consumer spending. Let's have a look at this. Let's blow it up a little closer here. Has been thought to be a constant fraction of consumer income. And that's what communication scholars were saying in places like the Journal of Communication. Well, as I discovered this set of papers, I realized, hey, they're just trying to do an Engle curve. They don't know the name, they don't know the terminology, they don't know the technology, but they're just trying to do an Engle curve showing expenditure on a consumer good or service as a function of income. So what they were really trying to do was to estimate an Engle curve of media spending with respect to income. And once they got that curve, then they could study the constancy of it and how reactions to income, they could study all that stuff. Until they had that curve, they were just going to be, kind of reaching around in the dark. You can have a very steeply sloped Engle curve where spending shoots up rapidly. You can have a rather flat one. You can even have a negative one. And they were kind of trying to figure out, well, what is the Engle curve for media like? So what I did was to get a sample. It was decades of media spending and then an overall sample. And then we fitted a line to it, just like that. So it was not any great econometric revelation, but with the Engle curve in hand, we could make inferences on the things they were trying to figure out. So let's see what's involved here. We did this regression. Again, I'll go and blow it up here. This is the critical decade here, and I'll just show you the significance tests here. The key estimate we got was 0.056, that consumers were spending 0.056 of their income, that is 5.6 cents of additional income of additional spending for each dollar of additional income on media technologies. In this time, the statistical package would give you the t-statistic 11.5, but you actually had to go look it up manually to find out if it was statistically significant. So remember that number 11.5, and for our degrees of freedom there, which are 8, we come over here and we find 2.306. So we get a t much bigger than that. We're able to reject the null hypothesis at 5%. In fact, with a t-statistic that big, we're able to reject the null hypothesis at 1% because it's, a lot more than 3.355. Two-sided test there at 5% and 1%. And then the overall statistical significance of the equation, that F number is 168.53. And we pull out our handy F table here. And what that tells us is we have to look up the degrees of freedom in the numerator and the denominator. And so that's going to be 1 and 8, and our critical F value is 5.32. Well, our actual F value is way more than 5.32, being 168.53, so it's not even close. And as we looked across the decades, what we found was that, wow, that media spending was bouncing all around, and therefore we disproved this constancy principle, the idea that media spending was some kind of constant function of income. So that is a hit and run on an Engle curve from media history.